Hello and welcome to the return of Cygnus Destroyer's Top 10s. After an extended absence spent trying notorious offenders in the IUPG court, I've gotten the urge to compile another gaming-related list, and since my Genesis Exclusives video recently reached the massive milestone of 100,000 views, there's no better time to flip the coin and talk about Sega's competition during the infamous console war, the Super Nintendo. Like anyone who grew up during that glorious age, I spent countless hours playing the beloved successor to the magical 8-bit entertainment system, and while I didn't get a chance to experience all of the amazing titles in that legendary library back then, the ones that I did changed my life for the better, so without further ado, it's time for me to pay tribute to the Super Nintendo games that made my childhood SNES-tacular.
If licensed tie-ins are usually synonymous with the type of trash found at the bottom of a dumpster, then Super Star Wars is a shiny diamond amidst that sea of subpar caliber slop. While not a direct translation to the source material, Super Star Wars hit all of the necessary bullet points by recreating most of the iconic scenes from A New Hope, allowing the player to assume the role of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. Sculpture Softer superbly captured the vibe of George Lucas's uber-popular franchise, and their adaptations of the trilogy still hold up in spite of some stiff competition that followed in their footsteps, so anyone who shares a love of the SNES and tales that took place in a galaxy far, far away should definitely check them out.
Be prepared to get dragged through the ringer though, since Super Star Wars is one of the toughest SOBs produced in an era known for its extreme difficulty. I rented and later owned this as a kid, and I never came anywhere close to beating it, so I'm living proof that the challenge might be too much for all but the most hardcore of controller jockeys. Fortunately, the developers made up for this by incorporating a bunch of codes for extra continues, level skipping, and invincibility, so feel free to use those with no shame in order to see this one through to the end. To put it another way, Super Star Wars is a kick-ass game that'll kick your ass, but it'll hurt so good and you'll be asking for more with a big dopey grin on your face.
Surprising as it may be, I was an RPG junkie when I was younger, and one of the most constant companions in my quest to feed my grinding addiction was Secret of Mana. In contrast to the traditional turn-based combat typically employed in the genre, Secret of Mana opted for a more action-oriented approach that deviated even further from its peers by including a multiplayer option within the main story.
Yes, you heard that right, a co-op RPG. That was a revolutionary idea, and I can only imagine how awesome it must be to tackle this square gem with a buddy or two. Sadly, I've only ever taken the solo route, and that's occasionally marred by a few bumpy roads. Nevertheless, Secret of Mana earned this treasured place in the RPG Hall of Fame, and any genre enthusiasts who haven't added a copy to their collection yet are doing themselves a tremendous disservice. Racers are rarely my cup of tea, but Super Mario Kart has always been my jam. I've never been great at it, and my skills are still severely lacking, but I'll never forget the weekend and holiday mornings spent clashing with my family in the battle mode, nor the delicious cinnamon roll breakfast that followed. I can think of a number of titles that I enjoy more than Super Mario Kart, and it's not even my favorite installment in the series, but those cinnamon rolls, they can't be beat. Anyway, Super Mario Kart, you know it and probably love it, so there's really nothing else I have to say.
Donkey Kong started off as the antagonist in an arcade classic, but the wizards at Rare revived the character in the early 90s, and the result is one of the finest side-scrollers to grace the home console market.
I don't recall how I first found out about Donkey Kong Country, but I'm guessing it was in the pages of Nintendo Power because I was pretty pumped for its upcoming release. In fact, I remember pre-ordering it from KB Toys and getting a really awesome shirt as a bonus. The shirt is sadly long gone, but at least I still have photographic evidence of its existence.
As for the game itself, Rare knocked it out of the park, and every single element that went into the creation of this cartridge, from the inventive level design and gorgeous visuals to the majestic music, is unlike anything else on the system. The platforming genre was rife with top-notch titles in the 8 and 16-bit eras, but Donkey Kong Country stands head and shoulders above the rest, and it's a must-own for retro gamers of all ages. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time offers a stark contrast from the rest of the entries on this list in that it originated as an arcade cabinet, but built the bulk of its rabid audience and earned my eternal adoration via its excellent Super Nintendo port.
Turtles in Time was one of my first experiences with the SNES, and anyone who's watched my full review will know that this is the actual copy that I received as a gift when I was a kid. I've created tons of treasured memories with this beautiful piece of plastic, and it'll always be part of my possession.
Whether you're going solo or brawling with a buddy, Turtles in Time remains to be one of the funnest beat-em-ups, and Konami did a fantastic job of crafting some of the most memorable and imaginative stages I've ever had the pleasure of playing. The graphics are appropriately colorful and cartoony, the soundtrack is filled with up-tempo rockers, and the story, though simple, feels like a long-lost episode of the '87 animated series. Turtles in Time may not quite reach the gold standard of the genre that is Streets of Rage 2, but it's absolutely worthy of being in the same league, and I give it my seal of approval. Chrono Trigger is many things, and it would require a large number of glowingly positive paragraphs to accurately describe it, but if I had to boil its essence down to just one hyphenated word, it would be awe-inspiring. Chrono Trigger mixes a brilliantly devised battle system with a time-traveling themed narrative involving quirky, lovable characters who embark on an epic journey that culminates in one out of a possible 10+ endings.
The creative team behind this powerhouse project was firing on all cylinders, and the replay value is enormous. Unfortunately, that value now fetches quite a hefty price tag, and I had to resort to using my SNES EverDrive for the footage featured in this video since I no longer have my childhood copy. But I've been told that there's a much cheaper alternative in the form of the DS port. The supposedly ultimate Chrono Trigger experience can be picked up for the bargain price of $30 to $40 on average, and I'd strongly urge anyone who's even mildly curious about this regal RPG to check it out. You won't regret it.
Ah, Super Mario World, the game that signaled the angelic arrival of the Super Nintendo. Launch titles often pale with age, but Super Mario World has never faltered, and it's still one of the signature side-scrollers against which others are judged.
I was lucky to get an original model SNES for Christmas of '91, and the utter joy I felt upon opening that present is perfectly captured in the pictures from that defining moment of my youth. I'm very happy to say that I still have that cartridge and the system it accompanied, though I've long since retired it in favor of a custom RGB model too. Regardless, just knowing that I have instant access to these cherished relics from my past warms my soul, and that is a feeling that few can measure up to. In fact, literally just a few. And the first of these wonderful works of art is
There are many reasons why A Link to the Past is widely considered to be one of the top titles in the expansive Legend of Zelda franchise. It takes everything that was great about the debut and elevates it to a whole new dimension with the addition of the Dark and Light World mechanic and Link's expanded arsenal of tools, not to mention the astoundingly badass Master Sword that served as a focal point of fascination for my childhood self.
A Link to the Past was my first real taste of The Legend of Zelda, and I immediately fell in love after renting it from the local mom and pop store. Needless to say, I knew exactly what I wanted for my birthday that year, and it turned out to be a very happy one indeed. I can't say enough positive things about A Link to the Past, and if I wasn't determined to get this out on a deadline, I'd probably be playing it as we speak. That's how captivating the overall presentation is, and anyone who hasn't partaken in this celebrated journey should do so as soon as possible. You'll thank me when you do.
The Blue Bomber's explosive debut on the 4th generation of consoles was simultaneously recognizable and a breath of fresh air for fans of Capcom's flagship franchise. Mega Man X retained the classic tried-and-true formula of its predecessors, but enhanced it with the help of the advanced hardware, weapon and armor upgrades, and some seriously rockin' tunes.
As someone who is so obsessed with the Blue Bomber that I constructed a paper Mega Man long before Mario made it an actual thing, I was on the ground floor for this superior SNES side-scroller, but unlike the rest of the entries on this list, I never owned it as a kid. For some strange reason, I only ever played this from weekend rentals after school, but those relatively short sessions were enough to etch a permanent impression, and I'm as intimately familiar with the Robot Masters and their weaknesses as I am the back of my hand. Mega Man X is without a doubt the title that cemented Capcom's mascot as one of the peak platforming pioneers, and I can't recommend it enough. Closing out this list of heavy hitters is an entry that will shock even the most loyal of supporters to this channel. In my 5 years of making videos, I've gained a reputation for having an affinity for bad games, and I've made it no secret that my preferences usually lie towards platformers and beat-em-ups. While the SNES had more than its fair share of both, none of them had as much of an impact on me during my childhood as the landmark 16-bit installment in the role-playing genre's quintessential series, Final Fantasy III.
Final Fantasy III, or 6 for those outside of the US, was the first RPG I ever played, and it instantly drew me into a vivid world of wonder the likes of which I'd never seen before. The brilliant story woven by the creative geniuses at Square offered a true cinematic experience, and the characters introduced over the course of the narrative are among the most memorable and intrinsically developed across all art mediums.
I unfortunately don't get a chance to play RPGs much these days due to my commitment to this channel, so it's been quite a few years since the last time I entered the world of Final Fantasy III, but coming back to it for this video reminded me why I fell in love with this game when I was a kid. The term masterpiece tends to get thrown around a little too eagerly, but this is one example where it's completely justified, and a rush of nostalgia surges over me whenever I have the pleasure of playing it. No matter where I end up in life or what types of games I turn to for entertainment, Final Fantasy III will always remain near and dear to me, and I'll forever cherish this tiny slice of heaven. That wraps up my list of the Super Nintendo titles that ruled my childhood. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear about your favorites in the comments. In the meantime, I've got another trial in the IUPG court to prepare for. Be sure to come back for that, but until then, this is Matt, aka Cygnus Destroyer, signing out.
Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw and you want to see more, the boxes on the screen right now will lead to some more of my videos, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking on my avatar in the bottom right hand corner. Thanks again.